Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode. The title is Autonomous Geometrical Movements in the Inner Realms. I wanted to comment on that in my own experience, in my life, I've had a very unique relationship with my imagination, a relationship that pretty much I've noticed that the mind is subconsciously processing things that we don't notice. And for me, that has come across as geometry. That many times in my life I have just looked at something or even someone speaking, and the way the sounds, the way they spoke came across to me geometric. To a point that from early on in my inner realms, geometry was a language of the mind, you know? You know, when a person is alone, that's when they can actually start seeing their world. Honestly, to dive into this, the word autonomous is something that has a freedom of its own. And so it was used by Carl Jung in referring to archetypes moving around in the unconscious of man. Carl Jung was a very remarkable mind, and he said, unless you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. As if the purpose of man is to notice how big the world is, and regardless of how small the language, the meaning, the implication, to explore, you know. I remember I was hearing recently. I heard a man named what was his name? Eric Weinstein. And Eric Weinstein, he said something very interesting, as if we are humans that are here to find our source code. You know, as if imagine reality is written with a certain code. And we have been for eons as human beings wondering, not for eons, but you know, for the 250,000 years that we feel civilization has taken its early steps. You know, so there is a meaning to the world. There is something more important than people, than objects, than subjects about people or subjects about objects. There's something way more mysterious about where we are, that none of us have opened the hood of this engine to see what's in there. And for me, every lifetime has its great mystery, has its great moments. You know, it's as if it's like a, you know, ride in a theme park or a wonderland or something like that, you know, where in the moment you're in the land, there's wonder. The moment where you're on that ride, there's meaning. When I look at my life ever since 2011, where there was a very noticeable shift, conscious shift of my own relationship with my intelligence, I can tell you that as I, in my own way, searched for what I am, I came to notice that there's a component to the moment being the whole thing. That means, what is the purpose of existence? To exist, really. That means if I want to look at my existential life purpose, it's complete. But when I look at my experiential life purpose, there seems to be room there for an activity. And I think that's where geometry comes in. Geometry is like, geometry is what's there when we zoom in on life. When we zoom out, it is also geometry. So really what I feel is going on is that technically we identify the macrocosm geometrically, you know, orbits and whatnot. And then the microcosm, we tend to see it geometric too. So you can say that human living is that place between the microcosm and macrocosm where pure geometry is not pure geometry to itself, you know? After 2011, when I suddenly realized I have no idea who I am, this whole life, all I have known were the ideas of who I am. But who I really am before the ideas were there, I realized I didn't know. And so what happens is you go through, at least I went through a certain phase where I stopped having opinions on myself. That means there was no positivity, no negativity. They stopped, you know? It was as if for a second, the positive, negative, that story stops and you see the geometry of the realm in front of you. The designer's vision, you know? You know, there's so many things that are beyond our control, you know? For me, believe it or not, it's very humbling to speak in a world. Because you notice how many silent moments there are, and the effort of noise is the effort of energy. That means regardless of what people have said, the fact that they have spoken has meant that they have seen something. You see, why would the creature speak? Why wouldn't it? In my inner realms, the geometry, my relationship with geometry wasn't there. When I was young, usually they say kids have a hell of an imagination, but when I was young, I didn't have an imagination. I'm not joking. Like literally, I could visualize maybe like big letters on walls, but I couldn't visualize like realms. I couldn't see. There was a sort of lack of acquaintance with the own strength of our mind. To be honest, the thing about imagination is that it's just boldness in the inner realms. That's it. In this life, you find yourself in a position, then there comes probabilities and variables. And as you, based on your value system as a human being, you process and discriminate between these variables, then the mind demonstrates modes of being. So I can tell you sometimes before I say the sentence here, I have thought about how to say it a couple times before I get to it. You know, there is that thing. And sometimes even after I get to it, I think of other ways it can be said. So really what it is we are energy that is aware of its design, but cannot define the awareness as a design. That is the mystery in the human glow. That is why we are all alive. To wonder why life was here before man, to wonder how life will be hereafter, and to not fear questions that transcend the limits of our perception. For that is the whole point of theoretical physics. For me, theoretical physics is the most spiritual part of physics. It is the most revelatory part where the mind of man is using the weapons that it's in its grasp to kind of like see what the world is, you know. There's something we don't entertain it. We think that we only get energy from the world, for example, through food, you know, through just nutrients. But I'm telling you, no. In this life is like it's like one of those things, what do you call it? One of those wind up toys, you know? It's an interaction. You know, that means when you are in a relationship with someone, that other person's mind has become as significant as your own to you, you know? And so what if the mind of your world became as significant to you as your own mind? What if you noticed the inseparability of the individual and the collective, and the inner realms freed themselves from any justification of whatever character they could be? That your eyes move even behind themselves. You know, I got very lovely actually. I was very happy for the comment. Somebody would listen to my talks, they had noticed these coughs and these extra noises in the talk. And, it was a very interesting moment, because I can totally understand how additional noises bother the sense of perfected expectation of the listener. But the thing about this life, as the Buddha tells us, three things are the three jewels of this realm. And any human being who, in some sense, finds contentment with these three ideas, these three jewels of Buddhism, you don't suffer anymore. You just watch the show. That means you don't suffer like an actor on stage. The actor doesn't suffer. The actor suddenly realizes its lines are its lines. Its performance is its performance, The inner realms are designed for you to selfish, to be selfish. But the outer realms are designed for you to be selfless, because the outer realms have a mind. That means many people who have sought power, who have sought to become kings of their own eyes, or kings in the world. Let me tell you, there is a power that exiles itself. It's sad. Do you know there have been kings? In Vedanta, there is this case where there has been this king, and this king dreams he's a beggar. A king of a kingdom back in the day. You sit on the throne every day, but he dreams he's a beggar. And he freaks out, and he thinks his next life he's going to be a beggar. And he asks the sage councilman in the palace back in the day, and the sage says, the king goes to his guru and says, I dreamed I was a beggar. What the fuck? And the guru says, the guy says, I'm a king, but I dreamed a beggar. What does this mean? And the sage says, you are neither the beggar, you're neither the king. Who are you? And suddenly the enlightened king remembers that I am neither a beggar, neither a king. I am. That is royalty. That is experiential royalty. That you realize there could be a coin flip of a chance this universe is alive. And if it is alive, perhaps we are alive in ways that we cannot comprehend, because we are from the world. I remember I was in where was I? Somewhere in America, I think. I don't remember where. I was with my family. This was years ago. But what happened was I was walking, and I was just on the crosswalk, not crosswalk, on the sidewalk, and I'm walking, literally going to the next block, the next intersection. As I'm walking, for the first time, if you could imagine the mind to be a copy-paste version of of the objective realm. So imagine like everything when you open your eyes, you see it. Imagine your mind copy-pastes it and creates that as another layer. But then that layer, on that layer, you start drawing different things. So it was, for a moment, it was as if my mind, my intelligence, was not trying to be a human being, was not trying to be anything. It was a geometrical release, as if deep down there is something that is seeking geometrical freedom in the world that it has been raised. For if you look at it through the religious lens, man has fallen. And you look at it through the scientific lens, man has nowhere to rise. If we accept the void, we have allowed emptiness to make us not notice what else is in the room. For me, when I listen to music now, for years I've been kind of polishing it, but now my inner realms, it's very easy for them to be geometric. Anything I can see, and my mind can overlay just very spontaneously geometrical shapes over it. you know. I honestly feel the language of the mind is geometric. And we don't realize the language of the universal sector is geometry. Geometry will be the next great language of all languages. We will see this. You see, I am certain that geometry will be the next great language. But the thing is, how I couldn't for a while, until a couple of days ago, where in the School of Athens Discourse server, it occurred to me. The most phenomenal idea of the evolution of language occurred to me. That we are going to get so fast in our ways of living that we won't need voices. Can you imagine a sci-fi future where everybody has these unique suits and people are no longer talking? They're just throwing hologram lights at one another, and the hologram light hits the person, goes into their suit because it's light, and they instantly know what you wanted to say. It becomes, it will be a moment where we will truly play catch with language as an advanced silent species, geometrically. So you can say there is a geometrical, at least for me, I experience this as an internal cinematic geometrical language. And this language, this force, has a will of its own. That means what's very strange is sometimes I think that the soul and the body are like a mirror, and there is an unknown mind standing in between. That means the known and the unknown are like a mirror, and they are not mirrors of the same size. You know, they're not mirrors of the same shape, but they are mirrors nonetheless. And when two mirrors are faced between one another, the human being is oscillating between infinite reflections of itself. So I would say when you look in the mirror, you see one individual there. You see your body, you see yourself, your physical self. You know, that's just one thing. But behind your eyes, what if every experience you have lived and you wanted to know what happens? Like, imagine you were designing, like, let's say you were building a table, you stop halfway, then you go and decide to build a car, you stop halfway, then you go decide to build a helicopter, and you stop halfway, and then let's say you go decide to build an airplane, and as you're building an airplane, you notice all these incompleted urges of various moments of the life, kind of being a sort of being spectrumized in the psyche. Because there is something known as fragmentation of the psyche. Now, fragmentation of the psyche means that we are first acknowledging or considering that normality is to be individual. That means we have made individualism the norm. And we haven't realized that it takes effort to be an individual. You know, if you go and argue with a tired person, that tired person 100% may disagree with you, but when they are tired, they'll be like, okay, whatever, man. Okay. There is so many sounds in this world, and so many sounds that haven't been given meaning to. I looked at the alphabet and I'm like, why did it stop at the letter Z? Why weren't there more letters? Why didn't people care to draw more symbols on a piece of paper? You know? And really what I think is people in any society can try to reduce any person who believes in something, but let me tell you, we are all believing in the void underneath everything we believe. That means, where did God create man? That's my question. That means I understand. In the Abrahamic context, God made man, okay, out of clay, and, like, I don't know, with his breath, he imbued life to the clay and told this man to say the names, the names of all existence. That means God pretty much created a body, then created a mind for the human being. Then, when there was the garden event, it was the development of morality. So you can say morality is self-made. But even the self is self-made, and that is the most beautiful paradox in this existence. It gives me goosebumps to even think about it. That the self is made, like in a good way, that the self is self-made. That the idea of man is man-made. Do you see? We have created a definition. We forgot the first definition, and we've been living on and on and on, thinking that there's a truth, not realizing that we set the dinner table up for our own feast. One can say that when you draw a geometrical shape on the paper, you have to trust the moment. You have to have faith in the strength of your hand that it can move the pen. Doesn't mean you have to have a blind faith. You know, just because a person is carrying a box, let's say an empty box, doesn't mean they have to put the empty box on their head. Just because the person is noticing emptiness doesn't mean everything is empty, you know? I feel this will happen. I feel that if we had right now robotic suits that from the palms of, imagine like Iron Man, futuristic Iron Man suits, where instead of like beams or instead of the Iron Man suit having weapons, let us say, the Iron Man suit has, I honestly feel the only reason we communicate as individuals is because what is real to one person in their inner realms and what is real to another person in the inner realms, there are two different locations. That if human beings somehow developed a collective mind, speech would become obsolete. And when we go to remember nature's mind, that's what happens in the mystical practice. Speech becomes obsolete. You know, could you imagine right now, like everybody listening, they think a person is speaking to them. What if it's a higher dimensional geometric phenomena? I honestly feel that if we were to comprehend geometry as the next great language, there will be no secrets left. There will be nothing left as a secret. There were mystics who they wanted to just get to the destination. And there were mystics who had realized the destination is in every moment. Your destiny is being expressed in every moment. That means after someone does something, it's so easy to be like, I was always destined to do this. You know? I feel that geometry is the next great frontier of mastering our inner realms, mastering our minds. That what happened when even Matrix in the movie, when Neo in the movie Matrix suddenly realized that it's all code. I feel that when we realize all phenomena is geometry, we have surpassed geometry. So an inconceivable being, perhaps you can say the language of the inconceivable is geometry. There we go. Now I'll give you more examples of what geometry can do in the inner realms. Anytime a person listens to a good song, like a symphony or some epic soundtrack or something, if you close your eyes and listen to music, you'll notice that every sound you hear, it resonates an emotion. And sometimes in a very sensitive way, I have meditated on music. And I've closed my eyes and I've just watched what happens to my inner realms. And every sound generates an emotion just by the impact of the sound with the eardrum. But aside from that, the response of the mind to sound, because sound is like an invisible action, the way the mind processes it. Okay? So when the mind processes it as sound as an invisible phenomena that it's receiving, you can say that it also identifies with the invisible. So honestly, if we didn't have mouths, there might probably have never been an identifiable duality. That means we could not be good or bad anymore. Do you see? And what if there has never been any good or evil or any type of people on this planet? What if there has only been people on this planet? What if there has never been someone who has understood you or misunderstood you? What if we have all just been standing under a massive event? For you can fast forward in your inner realms, you can fast visualize in the future. Eventually there will come a time some people will be, there's a galaxy above us. What do we do? Do we stay in caves that have no ends? Because that's the fear that keeps you in the beginning. I can tell you this life for me has been like a museum, walking into a museum of moments of fear and joy, moments of sorrow and joy. When I've had fear, I have felt as if like the feeling in the subconscious there comes that I don't deserve to go on, you know? Sometimes you have to fight, not with your hands, but with the vision of your inner eyes. That is true power. A power that cannot be touched. An energetic comprehension. I think geometry will be the last language before we become beings that energetically may be able to change anything. you know. So, for example, when a person listens to a song, let's say, it starts an event. So, a really great song, when I listen to, or when I sometimes see these auditions on YouTube, these talent show auditions, the person, my favorite thing to listen to is live music. So, I go and sometimes press like musicians just playing, and not recorded songs. And when I listen to that, there is a soul to the moment. You know, that's the power of improv. It doesn't hide the soul. You know, it took us 4 billion years to evolve and get here, and people are like, I'm shy, I'm scared, I'm weak, I can't. No, no, no. It took us 4 billion years to be able to just say I can. I even sometimes look at the concept of marriage, and I'm like, look at how this epic concept has been belittled. You know, it has been reduced. That means when you look at it from an evolutionary standpoint, millions of years had to take place for different parts of the brain to develop for us to just become enough people to notice each other. This is why any conscious activity is powerful. You know, you can say marriage is a shamanic ceremony. And back in the day, they had this view. First of all, nobody knows who they are. And at the same time, it would take a lifetime to get to know someone. Not just, you see a picture and that's it nowadays. Nowadays, it's like the art of being natural has been forgotten, you know? And it's weird. It's weird, you know? I think I was privileged because, in the sense that in my childhood, I would play outside, you know? I would climb trees. I would get into fights. You know, it was like life had a sort of kind of journey to it. Now, when I see the future generations, it's as if they are denying their journey has been denied to them due to the lack of attention to their parents. You know, what that means is, what if the purpose of life is to live it, is to see it, is not to calculate it as 100% known, or to just deny any calculation and think it's 100% unknown. Sometimes I feel I have entered this world in a very Zen way. That means I am not here per se for myself, which is temporary, or for the world that's going to be here a while. I am here. That's it. And I can tell you that in some of the most simplest, humblest moments of my mind, I have found treasures in my inner realm. Literally, the antenna frequency was like at the proper level. You know, I'll tell you, I've had very deep, sometimes just in the middle of nowhere, I'm walking and I'm doing something, you know, and suddenly in the middle of nowhere, certain deep ideas, inevitabilities come that I just get shocked. You know, I would tell them they are philosophically, very deep, philosophically, they're philosophical panic attacks. Philosophical panic attacks. Let's create that concept, you know? That means somebody could be like running a business very casually, then they speak to a philosopher and they notice there's a void underneath everything, and they're like, holy shit, what about my business? And so, you know, there was a scene from the show Entourage where this talent agent named Ari Gold, with his wife, they've gone to this therapist, you know. And the wife says to it's like a deep scene, it's like a heavy point in the storyline where like the God, how do I explain this? Pretty much a talent agent, a very famous talent agent, was about to buy a big business, but he was rivals with the person and he hated the person's business he was about to buy. Then the wife takes the husband into some therapy session, and the wife says to the therapist, "This it's like the husband wants the wife's money to buy the business." And the wife is like, "I don't think he's thinking straight. I think my husband's doing this out of emotions, out of rivalry." And then there's a scene where Ari Gold does this next level like acting. I mean, Jeremy Piven. He does this next level acting scene, and he says, "Because it's good business." There's a scene where he acts like that, where they're asking, "Why do you want to buy this company?" Because he says, regardless of what it is, it's the craft, it's the art form. It was like that character in the scene Entourage. It was like being a talent agent for him was his like martial art, like a Shaolin monk. Martial arts is for them like that. The art has a value. The design dimension of the realm is separate from the emotional dimension of the realm. When you understand this, you don't get pushed by language in this life anymore. So that's the thing. Ari Gold said it was good business. And sometimes I think life, what we do in life is just, it's good living, the good business of living. The Buddha says the three jewels are impermanence, imperfection, and incompleteness. What does that mean? That means you may seek completion, but you will find yourself incomplete. You may seek permanence. You might want to become immortal, but you will suddenly notice everything is impermanent. That means even if you become immortal, the world goes on changing. Um, Shielded by the ignorance of belief, we have denied our own performance on the greatest stage known to man. That means honestly, when I give these talks throughout the years, it's been like a long time now, like 6 years, and I can tell you in these 6 years, so many different angles on what I have been doing with these talks have come to me from other people. And I noticed there is a dimension of the acknowledgement of the collective, and then there is a dimension of the will of the individual. So I can tell you honestly that if you know the value of existence, you'll experience it. If you don't know the value of existence, then non-duality can be a very boring abode. Can you imagine upon the human beings' effort to imagine human beings in the next, I don't know, 200 years. Like, I'm going to try to push this as far as I can, and then whoever comes after. Eventually, I feel there will come the stabilization of a universal, of an existential geometric language. This language is going to be a language where we tap into universal memory. It would be for the first time that we are consciously being the whole universe. Right now, the person can have any belief. I mean, think about how many ways you have believed and disbelieved in yourself. Do you know you can even believe in disbelieve your own ability, you know? But when you realize life is rhythm, you realize, I will tell this, anybody who tries anything, who's trying to achieve anything, you must go through 10 failures. And after 10 failures, the spirit of the craft will welcome you. That means endure in whatever you do and literally have imagine you 10 times of failure. If the person tries something 10 times, they fail, after the 10th time, if they fail, their failure is not because of their intelligence, it's because of their ignorance. You know, I think about it. Why do we have way more an urge towards creation than destruction? You know, sometimes I think of violence on this earth and I'm like, is violence natural? Like, can we judge it? Or is it just like nature? And then I realized the whole point of man stepping out of the jungle was to actually behave differently than a creature bound in an ecosystem. So the whole point of us right now wearing clothing and, speaking and having the sophistication of the human being and not like jumping from trees to trees like chimps, the reason we're doing this is because we have made the world the self's responsibility. And you can say in the linguistic simulation, the cousin of responsibility is responsibility. That this life and your intelligence is really like, I don't know how people see their mind. But for me, my mind is, I used to be its servant when I didn't care for it. Because when you don't care for something, it gets vicious towards you, if you notice. You know? If you actually don't consider the life force of a person who's, let's say, in front of you, it's like dismissal has been a huge source of violence, you know? I see it like this. I see life like a strategist who sees that there is short-term consequences and there's long-term consequences. That means I don't really care about the battles in life. For me, moment to moment to moment to moment in life, it's like okay, maybe the first um, I don't know, maybe 1/4 of life you're super fascinated in being something, but after a while you realize everything is being something regardless. You know, and even if you try to do something, it's going to just be a brushstroke, and many brushstrokes are going to come after that, covering it. You know, Okay, so CPT-Ks 317. How does body language fit into the new form of language you're describing? I mean, body language is limited to our eyes. So if we find this method of sight, let's say cyberspace, if we are connected to the internet and we don't need to see each other's bodies, because in the cyber, let's say in the cyber, uh, uh, I'm just saying, if in the future there was a sort of cyberspace simultaneity of collectivehood where you were walking in the street but you were simultaneously walking also in a cyberspace realm as an avatar. And so just like how a person has two different computer screens and they could see two different things, I could say that body language is going to, it depends on which screen we're looking at. If the body is in, body language will be preserved, because the whole point of the human being having in the future attempting to communicate so fast is because, imagine, like, okay, I'll give you an example, CPT. So imagine like me and you are playing, let's say there's a baseball and I'm throwing this at you at the end of a field and you're standing on the other end of the field, okay? As I imagine now that this baseball suddenly hovers into the air in my hand and becomes a glowing, filled inside it with geometrical patterns, spherical orb of light. So imagine that baseball in my hand, the same size of the baseball, it hovers in my hand and it becomes a geometrical sphere filled with, it's like a knowledge. It's literally the experience I want to communicate, but I've made it into a ball. Now imagine in a sci-fi way, I just throw that geometrical sphere at you and you don't need to even catch it. When that geometrical sphere hits you, you suddenly know exactly what I'm saying. You see, we're trying to get a non-violent civilization, but then we need human beings to still have some method of expressing their energy. You know, sometimes violence is a release. The person is not violence, the person is just overbound by so much pressure that it's like they're at a breaking point, so they one need to find a reason to release. But let me tell you, the advanced civilization doesn't release foolishness in the outer realms. Yeah, it means you stop making wrong chess moves and you take as long as you need in this life to observe before you step onto the battlefield. Because the point of language is communication, and the point of communication is to build a bridge between the inner realms. So you can say the focus is not the body's movement per se only, or the mind's movement. So CPT, I would tell you, the way I have envisioned it for Civilization 2.0 is that we have to create games that are going to make the human being become physically healthy. And I realized we have to instantly invest in jetpack technology, a sound-based, safe jetpack technology. Let me tell you why. Because human beings with an addition, like a jetpack, will have more of a physical life. Can you imagine you're late for work and you're like jumping on the roofs of buildings? Do you know what I mean? With a jetpack, and the jetpack is so sensitive that when you jump, the jetpack is so epic that you don't actually touch the buildings. You know, so the whole point is that it's like, for how long can people go in a gym and just do barbells? You know what I mean? After some point, it's going to become a situation where we want the same activity, but a different landscape, a different game. So imagine in the future, even gyms and workouts are going to become like you just put virtual reality goggles on and you're actually like going through a landscape. You're actually playing a video game, but in it, all the things for the video game are like exercises, you know? Because that's the whole thing. You have to, when you look at children, you play games with children. You know, that's, children are so wise. They have understood the meaning of life so well. They know it's a game to play, not a game to run away from, not a game to calculate, to disregard the fun. It is a game to play. So I would tell you that we have to create accompanying this geometrical language, which I think it's gonna, because the vocal cords are it doesn't matter how loud you speak. Can you imagine, like, in the future being there, these masks We put on these masks, and the person with the least amount of energy, their voice projects super loud. You think says need to release pressure, question mark. That is when a person ought not drink alcohol. No, it doesn't have anything to do with alcohol. You think when I say sometimes a human being is violent as a sort of release of expression, the issue with that, if there is alcohol in the system, they can't discriminate well. Alcohol is their bad judgment, but you can say the pressure is built up over time. So what that means is, imagine you've been like, excuse my language, but let's say you've been living a shitty job for many years, right? So that means every day you've been working a job you hate, you're like, why the fuck am I here? Why the fuck am I here? And every day you're doing that, right? So imagine after a year. Do you see what I'm saying? Imagine after a year, the person's like has every day that hatred built, and that hatred suddenly pours out. You know? And that's the thing, that when we realize the world surpasses our eyes, we will bow to the greatness of the advanced civilization. We won't bow as if like we bow like in Japan, how they bow. If life is a dance of elements, organized through strange laws, most people, I think, when the world doesn't accept them, they stop accepting the world. But we should have this approach where this actor Anthony Hopkins says, what other people think of me, that's their business. Why should I care? You know? Guys, I just thought of a hypothetical story that a person, imagine they prayed to this sort of creator in this universe. And they were like, God, help me. And imagine the person was in a chaotic moment, even like the movie Gray level. And imagine right when the chaotic thing was about to happen, suddenly divine intervention arose, and it was as if God actually had heard the prayer, imagine. And this person, suddenly a miracle happened and they were saved from that situation. Then the person is in with an audience with God in this hypothetical situation, imagine, and the person says, God, why did it take so long? Why? Did I not deserve it? Did I do something wrong? Why did you come at the last moment? And imagine God looks at the man and says, sorry, I was busy. Sorry, but you know, but it didn't mean just because we were busy, we didn't care, you know. I'm gonna go into a geometry quote tunnel, guys, to see how people have spoken about geometry. Johann Kepler. Geometry is the archetype of the beauty of the world. Plato. The knowledge of which geometry aims is the knowledge of the eternal. Paul Rand. You can't criticize geometry. It's never wrong. Ibn Khaldun. Geometry enlightens the intellect and sets one's mind right. Pythagoras. Geometry is knowledge of the eternally existent. Henry Poincaré. Geometry is the art of correct reasoning from incorrectly drawn figures. Aristotle says, the mathematical sciences particularly exhibit order, symmetry, and limitation, and these are the greatest forms of the beautiful. Rudolf Steiner. Geometry is knowledge that appears to be produced by human beings, yet whose meaning is totally independent of them. I am telling you, geometry is the divine mystery of the secular mind. William Fogg Osgood. Geometry is the noblest branch of physics. I will tell you, geometry is its own field. It surpasses physics. Pythagoras says there is geometry in the humming of the strings. There is music in the spacing of the spheres. The spacing of the spheres. He doesn't mean the space between planets. He means the atmosphere and the surface of the earth, as if they are two spheres. Euclid. The laws of nature are but the mathematical thoughts of God. Havelock Ellis. The mathematician has reached the highest rung on the ladder of human thought. I would say not the mathematician, the geometrician. Gandhi says, if Euclid's point, though incapable of being drawn by any human agency, has an imperishable value, my picture has its own for mankind to live. If Euclid's point, though incapable of being drawn by any human agency, has an imperishable value, my picture has its own for mankind to... Oh yeah, Gandhi's just saying he has his own view on eternity. Eric Temple Bell. Euclid taught me that without assumptions there is no proof. Therefore, in any argument, examine the assumptions. George Polya. Euclid's manner of exposition, progressing relentlessly from the data to the unknown and from the hypothesis to the conclusion, is perfect for checking the argument in detail, but far from being perfect for making understandable the main line of the argument. Xenocrates. Oh my God, these these ancient Greeks, their names are, were like transformers or something, Geometry is one of the handles of science and philosophy. Plato, the knowledge of which geometry aims is the knowledge of the eternal. Jean Dieudonne says analytical geometry has never existed. There are only people who do linear geometry badly by taking coordinates, and they call this analytical geometry. Out with them. Wow. This man was staying true to the art. Nicholas Murray Butler. The analytical geometry of Descartes and the calculus of Newton and Leibniz have expanded into the marvelous mathematical method. Bertrand Russell. Calculus required continuity, and continuity was supposed to require the infinitely little. But nobody could discover what the infinitely little might be. I think we have to decide to create elements of thought. Literally like a periodic table for archetypes. And geometry is the only way we can. David Mumford. Algebraic geometry seems to have acquired the reputation of being esoteric, exclusive, and very abstract, with adherents who are secretly plotting to take over all the rest of mathematics. In one respect, this last point is accurate. Wow, guys, who knew there was a war between mathematicians? The mathematical wars, you know. Wow, this is a quote by someone named Ta-Nehisi Coate. He says, I did not know then that this is what life is. Just when you master the geometry of one world, it slips away and suddenly again you're swarmed by strange shapes and impossible and angles. Yeah, that's why I'm saying, like, get comfortable with the unknown. This is a quote from probably the last one I'm going to read, or the second last. I want to read a quote from Aristotle before I know. Where's the quote? Nature doesn't, this is by Maya Lin. Nature doesn't fit into a geometric notion of what the world should be. It is the naturalness I find the hardest to capture. You know, lines don't care if they're straight or if they're curved in geometry. It is the mind of the page that is really caring. And so if we perhaps start behaving like an advanced civilization will be what we naturally deserve. We're in literally the deserving archetype of it. Aishwarya C. Kondaguli. Life is like a geometry. Draw a circle with loveliness as a center, with friend as a radius, and measure its diameter with merits. God, I wanted to read something from Aristotle. Hang on, guys. So these are some quotes from Aristotle. There are some who, because the point is the limit and extreme of the line, sorry, I'll read that again. There are some who, because the point is the limit and the extreme of the line of the plane and the plane of the solid, think there must be real things of this sort. So what's Aristotle saying here? He's saying because the point is the limit and extreme of the line, so that means one point is the limit and endless points together make up a line, so the extreme of the points of the extreme, so we can say it's like humanity is a line and we're all points in it. Then it says, because the point is the limit and extreme of the line of the plane and the plane of the solid, think there must be real things of this sort. Yeah, what that means is if like the point is meaningless, then it's like you could look at a solid, but then you'll be like, if this is just meaningless points. In the same way where we're approaching nowadays in the world a very materialistic perspective where we're just a bunch of atoms, we're a hallucination of character. You know, what is this? You know, how in the world did electrons become minds? Do you see? In sophisticated ways. So it's like there's a mystery to the world still, and right now I am trying with these talks to you know what it is? It's as if like we're not actually taking. It's like freedom. Let's say if somebody wants to experience freedom and life is a balance between freedom and discipline, you can say the ultimate freedom is also the ultimate discipline. So you cannot have ultimate freedom until there is some sort of ultimate discipline. Like, because really, what does the consciousness have to do in the moment? We're just like in the moment, you know? Aristotle says we do not know a truth without knowing its cause. Aristotle pretty much like is saying you know nothing, Jon Snow, to the human species. Aristotle says education is the best provision for the journey to old age. Aristotle says pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. Aristotle doesn't say anything else because there's no more quotes, guys. I'm going to end the quote time. Oh, no, actually, no, there's no more quotes. There is one quote I know by heart, which is from Jonathan Swift, and he says, vision is the art of seeing what is invisible to others. I feel anybody who really meditates on what Jonathan Swift meant by that sentence will suddenly notice the value of their mind. You know, that means if you're an object here, it is super easy to see no meaning to anything. But if the object is moving in an unknown way, what if we say it is true that man can know things, but let's say the action, the event of knowing something is unknown. It's an unknown event. So you see, we can mask the world in language, but the mystery continues to breathe. Your inner realms are like your private studio. What does that mean? That means you could be sitting on the bus and there could be someone next to you and the person can have any thought and the other person beside them can have any thought and they don't interfere. Like it is the case some days when I've been super tired and I've ran in the subway and I've needed to go downtown. It was a situation where I was literally so tired. Literally, it was like you can say a sort of all-nighter, close to all-nighter. Maybe I just felt the softness of the bed a little, and then I just got up. You know, I just felt the Pure Lands for a moment, you know, and then got out of the bed, you know. What it is there is like a, when you don't add anything to the moment, you see what is being added to the moment. But when you add something to the moment, it is the case that most often it does, your inner realms cover your outer realms. I'm saying that it should be 50-50. I'm not saying that we should all suddenly think the whole universe is a mind. We're just in some cosmic mind. I'm saying that we should just realize, take some notes from the sermon of the yin yang symbol. That means I feel this is the healthiest way for a species to stabilize itself as members of a civilization, that we have known bodies, we have unknown minds. What does that mean? That means we can't judge morality based on good and bad. Why? Because everybody has their own notion of good and bad. That's why crimes happen in the world. You know, what's bad to someone is not bad to someone. What's good to someone is not good for another. You see, so it becomes a situation where if we want to have a judgment, emotional, moral judgment system, there's many angles going unseen. So I feel we have to update morality from storification to, was the action efficient or inefficient, and on how many levels? You know, sometimes, you know, I have gotten afraid in my life, but I've also wondered who's getting afraid right now. Who is this me that I think I have been the same thing my whole life, but it's impossible. You know, life is an experience generating existential performance. The stage is the void. The audience is time. And we, the earth being the stage, we are the actors in this cosmic event. So I sometimes feel we may think that what we do only has a value to us, but what if, like imagine somebody throws trash on the street and the dimensions are like in a butterfly effect connected. So a different, like let's say in an extraterrestrial civilization on a different planet, they're like, oh my God, somebody threw trash on Earth. It's changing the resonance of our whole planetary grid. You know. You have to be simple, be okay with the simple. Then honesty is the next thing. Then you find an honest world to live in and you start being honest. Then after honesty, gentleness comes. With gentleness there comes life sensitivity. After life sensitivity comes, you're still learning from the known rhythms of the world. But after you learn from the known rhythms of the world, once you have completely listened to your outer realms, the only thing left to listen, the only journey left is the inner realms. Because a lot of life, it's like, what meaning does it have? What meaning does it have when a person drinks a glass of water? You know, what's the purpose of life when someone drinks a glass of water? You know, what's the meaning of the life of that glass of water? Things don't have a meaning even on their own. They're in comparison with the context, because if we are saying reality is a concept, then what if could the unreal be the context? Could the imagination be the context if reality is the concept, or could imagination be the concept in the inner realms and reality is the context? That means when I move in the outer realms, I don't feel like, to be honest, I'll say this, the idea of the human being doesn't arise because I am being the human being. But in the inner realms, because the attention could potentially witness phenomena that deviates from human familiarity, then it becomes where in the inner realms, I've set an example of this. Like, for example, uh, In my childhood, I was raised between two cultures, and I was born in Iran, but most of my life I've been in Canada. But I've been to Iran as well. I've lived there too. And I could tell you that when I go to Iran, I feel Canadian. When I'm in Canada, I feel a bit Iranian, you know? And so it's like it's the same where in the outer realms, I feel like a mind. In the inner realms, I notice the body. The body is like, that's the station. That means any inner event or in any dream state, what does the person want to do in a nightmare? They just want to wake up back into where? The body. That means when you go into dream states, you actually need reality as a liftoff platform. And sometimes if you want to advance in reality, you need dreams as a liftoff platform. And once you live, I say it's called the great work. I've named it like that, and then somebody told me, "Yo, man, in alchemy, somebody's talked about the great work," and I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, it's, like, sure, so many people can talk about the great work because the whole notion of it is we're wondering about what is the true value of this creature. Is the value of this creature? That means that question is another way of saying why did all our ancestors to continue? Sometimes when I see like the planet has a lot of suicide rates, I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, what reason? What rationalization? Because the whole point of time is that the future is unknown. The future is like a gift you haven't opened yet. How do you know what's in it? We at least know that after you open the gift, then there's the emptiness of the box, but that's inevitable. So we have to treat every moment as greatness. I'm telling you, there's something that ever since I tried this, the skill, like after you walk into, you can say, here's the thing. After you get out of the intellectual wonderland, the next thing becomes practicality. So all those people, you can say what the philosopher wants after philosophizing what a portal would be like is to actually step into one, right? That's the evolution of knowledge, really. It makes you into, it honestly puts the standard of your simplicity higher. It doesn't mean you're a complex person, but it just means what a lot of complexity has become simpler to you. Can you imagine Albert Einstein coming up with the equation E equals mc squared and everybody being like, imagine that day where they were awarding Albert Einstein the prize of prizes. Imagine on that day, after they honor Albert Einstein and they give all of this, right? And everybody celebrates and claps. Let's say at that same time a portal opens, an alien comes out, an alien, a future human being or something. Let's say a future human being comes out of this portal and says they're all human beings. Um, I understand that this E equals mc squared is a new revolution for you guys, but it is wrong. I come from the future, and this is the exact thing. And in that moment, imagine suddenly this alien gives us like the proper mathematical, precise explanation of like all of reality. And then in that moment, Einstein's going to look at this person, not this future time traveler, let's say, and be like, what the fuck, man? I'm like in the middle of being awarded something, and you're coming here and, ruining my E equals MC squared. Why don't you E equals MC? Get out of here. And in that moment, let's say that person who came out of that portal, the time traveler, he says, little do you know, Einstein, I am you from the future. And Einstein suddenly realizes the value of collective evolution. And that's just a hypothetical, just I animated story on the spot. But really, what it is, the point of it is that because we don't know, we can know. Because there's things to know more about, life can have games. Because life can have games, these games are interpretations. When we look at the way this biomechanism is kind of like interpreting things, it's endless. You can interpret things in endless ways. The more you look at something, it's like the more dimensions of meaning you're adding to it. I'm telling you, every time I share like stories in these talks, I'm also like an archaeologist, like picking up this ancient story and trying to like wipe the dust off it and to see what it is. Because there's so many ways that the eyes of the human being are open. That can we really make truth be sight based? I think truth is the seer within. That's the poetry of earth being created in the heavens. That right now we have painted the face of the world with flags, not realizing that the silence of the galaxy is where the next great conversations will be had. They said, and go big or go home, but what's hilarious is the big is the only home. You know? Shakespeare says some are born great. Some achieve greatness. And some have greatness thrust upon them. After the enlightenment, you can say the notion of moksha, which is being born into the greatness. Then, after from the non-dual awareness, then the next thing is to achieve the greatness. That means a lot of people go towards spirituality because they're actually what's in the world is causing them suffering and they just don't want to get out of it, right? But you shouldn't run away from anything in this life, because what if it took you 5 billion years, you were waiting for this, you know? What if like you just take into this notion that tomorrow you as a person wake up as if like a football player excited to run into the field to play the activity. Don't fear humanity. There will be many laughs on the way. Some of those laughs will be gentle. Some of those laughs will be rough. It's just that right now more than ever, it's honestly like it's like, sometimes I feel like shouting at the sky, it's like a global community of designers, assemble! Like some notion like that where people from around the world are noticing we can get involved. You see, here's the difference. The animal in the jungle, the ecosystem moved it. But now man is moving the ecosystem. So the only thing we can do is now consciously move the ecosystem. And efforts to do that have led us to creating recycling bins. But now the effort has to expand. The first thing, something I think every parent should shout, kindly though, shout at their child. The only thing they should shout out at their child when they're young is remember, everybody is a human being first, before whatever you think they are. We are evolutionary design, and then we're just energy somehow watching itself. I mean, like, I feel like this renaissance is coming. I've called it the multidimensional renaissance, something that we've never seen. The emergence of the first global puzzle. That it makes everybody step out of their linguistic sphere and just run towards seeing what this advanced civilization could be like. Because I'm telling you, it's like we are technically, I don't want to, like I don't see it as a war, but I like to use it as a metaphor sometimes, that we are at war with the unknown. What that means is we're 8 billion creatures thrown on a battlefield, and literally it's like all we can do is try to build something that, as unknown things happen, for example, natural disasters or even unknown events. Sometimes when I saw this documentary, I was showing on certain violent people's psychology, and their psychology was like it had no reason. So in a world where there's no reason, violence is strangely artistic. Artistic, Artistic. For the first time, we have an ability to consciously experience what all those birds who fly in the sky synchronous, like, rhythmically together can. And we can only do this with minds and communication. And I think, honestly, the health of civilization, the way the air is, I think if the world keeps getting polluted and capitalism keeps getting stronger, inevitably we'll be left in a world where the world is extremely polluted and we can't breathe in it, imagine. And we have these, like, capitalist based product line of next level clean air suits. Can you imagine? Can you imagine there will come a day where we messed up the air conditioning of our planet and it led to extinction or some sort of unnecessary suffering? Out beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing, there is a place. I will meet you there, says the poet Rumi. And he says, and when the soul sits on that grass, the world is too full to talk about. If the world is too full to talk about, that is the ultimatum of intelligence. That intelligence, we are just, it's so magnificent that I honestly think intelligence is a multidimensional activity, but we are one petal of the flower. There is no cheating to knowledge. Knowledge is exploration. The only way you can cheat in knowledge, CPT, I'm just responding to your comment. The only way you can cheat your knowledge is believing in something, in a picture, in a snapshot, when life is a film. That's the only way you cheat yourself out of the potential of your own knowledge. That means it's like you're a master violinist, but you're like, you feel violins are evil. You think the actual instrument, the violin, is evil. It's like, I don't like to touch the violin. But imagine you're a master violinist. And if you realize that if you got rid of that picture on the wall of your mind, and you realize that this canvas requires now the master painter's hand, you know? An advanced civilization, I've called it the yin-yang civilization, where we're actually two types of civilization. So anytime people get tired of one kind, they could go to the other. I'll be honest, guys, I had a dream which inspired me to write a book in 2012, 13 or 12, one of those years. And the dream was, it was so real. Let me tell you what the dream was. It was short. It was like a 30-second dream. But in the dream, I was looking at a night sky. And you know how you see stars in the sky? I saw those stars were moving in a line. And I remember if I woke up and the only sentence that I could think of naming it was the highway of stars. And I wrote a book about it. You know, how to build a highway of stars, build towards that. Sometimes I think the body is like in a singular dimension, the mind is in multiple, and the conscious waking state. And sometimes I think that what if the planet, we are calling it a planet and calling it Earth, this rock, but it's actually a body for a mind we cannot comprehend. So I'm pretty much saying, what if the planet has a mind? Now, if the planet has a mind, what would the relationship of man be? Look at the dimensions, look at what the future have to deal with. They have to deal with their relationship with the natural world. They have to deal with their relationship with the technological world. They have to deal with their relationship with beyond the atmosphere, and they have to deal with their relationship with the end of the system, which is time. Right now, we don't have to deal with technology too much, in the sense it's not too problematic now. It's like, you know what it is? It's like technology is it can be very lifeless and cruel. That means I just hope in the future there isn't a sort of karma where it's like a labyrinth of mechanical nullification of human value. Like we hopefully we can remember where our eyes came from, so wherever they go to, there's a torch we are carrying, the torch of the meaning of what it meant to be alive. The poet Rumi says, be living poetry. That means don't just look for beautiful things, don't just desire beautiful things, don't try to be beautiful, you know, in regards to outer realms. Be living poetry means like there will come a moment in the life of every human being where the planet will suddenly become like the most beautiful symphony that their soul is hearing. And then you'll see what I mean, that an advanced civilization is waiting. It's there's so many evolutionary phases I could see. The phoenix, which is an archetype for wisdom in mythology, it was an archetype for wisdom because wisdom that is different from knowledge is wisdom is experience based, and the experiencer doesn't lie to itself. It can't, you know. It's like so many people, they can criticize a person's speech in regards to the way they use words, but can you criticize the words? Can you criticize ink on a page? The ink on the page is ink on a page, yeah. Existentially, we are equal. Experientially, we don't need to be equal. We just need to advance. Because, as Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, this liberated sage, has said, diversity without separateness is the ultimate the mind can touch. Diversity is experiential. Without separateness is our existential design. It's as if it's like everybody's wearing a biological human. I don't want to say Iron Man suit, but there is iron in the body. So if we treat the body like a suit and we have iron in our body, so technically we have tiny percentage of our biological body being an Iron Man suit. Depends on how much iron is in your diet. It's fascinating. It's like sometimes I just wonder, it's like, why first person? Is God playing like a video game? You know how like video games it's first person character? It's like, why were our eyes designed to be on our face? Why weren't they designed to be above our heads so they could see? Like you see a tree, the tree's branches, they go towards the sun. Why did our eyes not evolve on our the top of our crown chakra? Why didn't our eyes evolve on the top of our head? Sometimes I feel this dimension's being drawn from another dimension. This was an idea strangely in my when I asked my father about his metaphysical perspectives, he told me it was from the Sufi path, but I checked for it and it was something that very few people have commented on. Like it doesn't, nobody's commented on that. And it was something like, pretty much, okay, to sum it up, I was having a conversation with my father about, you can say from a Jungian standpoint, autonomous archetypes in the unconscious. And my father was saying that there is, in higher dimensions, this dimension is being drawn. Every flower, every branch of a tree, every bird, every genetical pattern, its effect is in this dimension. But it is being caused in, like, on the other side of the coin, being a sort of design thing. That means technically we are the artwork of the gods, and nature is the god of the gods, the presence of all nature at once. Because I'll tell you, nature is alive, but because we're alive to ourselves in such a specific way, we can't notice how we coexist and harmoniously live with nature. I'm telling you, just the best meditation, if you're a person who has intensity or anger or suffering in your life, I'll tell you, you just got to go and watch a tree. You got to go look at a tree like a 2-hour film. And you got to notice how animals are living and how we human beings, we actually define our own complexity. You see, that means animals in nature, they don't suffer. Have you noticed? Do you see a depressed cat? Do you see a depressed dog? Do you see depressed animals? You might see them scared or whatever based on the environment, but the animal doesn't go like, I'm having a bad day, what do I do? You know? The animal doesn't think that way. The animal is literally, all right, I'm seeing in a world, I'm in a world, holy shit, go forth, go forth, go forth. That's energy. That's evolution. That means you don't realize it, but your genetics are incredibly hard workers. Your genes are incredibly hard workers. You know? That means there is something we have mastered as a species. And that's to continue so far. I was thinking something about Lord of the Rings, guys. Someone in the chat section says Gandalf. I was thinking something so hilarious that I started, like, there was a time I felt like I was laughing. Like, I can't tell you, like, how funny this was to me. There's a scene in Lord of the Rings, Fellowship, the first one, where Gandalf is, like, literally on this bridge. Gandalf is on this bridge, and this Balrog, this creature, this creature of shadow and flame is coming to the bridge, right? Shadow and fire or whatever. And Gandalf has this, like, spear of purity shielding him, you know? And he shouts to the person, "You shall not pass," to the creature, and he hits the staircase and they fall, right? And then I was thinking, what if that was like the Balrog's house? And somebody just comes in your house, and the Balrog's like, "Get out of my house," and Gandalf just breaks the guy's staircase and they both fall down. But Lord of the Rings was such an incredible epic. Like, Tolkien was so ahead of his time that when they fall from that magical, like, place, they fall into the top of a mountain peak or something like that. The Balrog's like, "What are you people doing in the mines of Moria? Get out of here!" Vicky in the chat section says, "Ah, you removed the comment right before I was about to read it." Okay. Anyways, guys, geometry moves in the inner realms. When you study your imagination, don't just think like you have a person has a problem. There's no such thing. Everybody who does, it's like it's like, I'll give you a natural metaphor. Stale water goes bad. Literally, like a puddle, bacteria gathers in the puddle. Do you know what I mean? But if it's running water, then there's a sort of a sort of different novelty dimension to it. You know, so live like a river. You know, not like a puddle. That's the value of the future. It is the greatest gift that yet awaits to be opened, you know. That is the true gift, that you realize that's the essence of the great work, that you are living not for the civilization that is in the here and now, but for the civilization that in the future will be the here and now. Sometimes I feel like in some parts of my talk, I'm speaking to the past. In some points, at some points of my talk, I'm speaking to the present. And some moments of it, I feel I'm speaking to people who perhaps haven't even been born yet. So, guys, I'm going to end the talk. I'm going to share a Discord link. In the Discord link, there's an opportunity of voice chat. In the voice chat, you can talk to me in person, and there's whoever wants to discuss her hermetic wisdom or something, hermetics. We can discuss it in the Discord server. I think that's like the whole point, because usually people gather there and think of what to talk about. What was I looking for? Oh yeah, the end stream button. Thanks for listening, guys.